Well, good afternoon, Michigan. Michigan, right? Right. Okay, good. Welcome to Unit 2. My name is Jack Barlow, and I teach politics at Juniata College here in Pennsylvania. And my fellow judges are Judge Draper.
I'm Lindsay Draper, retired from the juvenile court bench here in Milwaukee County, Wisconsin.
And I am Bob Allison. I teach American history at Suffolk University in Boston.
And would you introduce yourselves and your teacher, please?
Thank you for allowing us to testify before you today. We are Unit 2 from East Grand Rapids High School, composed of juniors and one sophomore. I'm Eleanor Vandermolen.
I'm Eli Huey.
I'm Isabel Ranger.
And I'm Mallory Houlihan, and we are coached by the fabulous Adam Horos and Ben Langholtz.
Excellent. East Grand Rapids, very good. Okay, so we're going to talk about Unit 2 today. I will read the question and we will get started. Did I forget anything else? No. Okay. Unit 2, how did the framers create the Constitution? And the question today, big surprise, question 2. One founder claimed that representatives should, quote, refine and enlarge the public views by passing them through the medium of a chosen body of citizens whose wisdom may best discern the true interest of their country. Do you agree or disagree with this claim? What alternative systems of representation were considered by the founders? What alternative systems of representation, if any, should be considered in the 21st century? And please begin.
After witnessing the tyrannical British rule, Founding Father James Madison fervently concluded the people are the only legitimate fountain of power. This belief is further reflected in Federalist 10, where Madison argued that there must also be an adequate scheme of representation in place. This scheme should refine the beliefs of the citizens and enlarge their views by weaving them into legislation. Because of its ability to represent citizens, while also discerning what will provide the most national benefit, we agree with our framers that an elected legislator acting as trustees of the people are the feet on which free government stands.
Our legislature functions most effectively when it's truly refining and enlarging public opinion. The broad focus of our legislative branch empowers our representatives to create policy that affects much more than just their constituents. A representative from Michigan might not be concerned with southern border security or public transit. Conversely, a representative from Texas might not find importance within Great Lakes legislation. Yet a national legislature requires representatives from all states to address these topics. In the words of Madison, if you extend the sphere, you take in a greater variety of interests.
When a legislature is run by the majority, the risk of a tyranny of the majority is excruciatingly high. During the Revolution, many colonists believed a government closely tied to its constituents would limit arbitrary rule, but state experiences proved otherwise. Our framers recognized that the enlightened views and virtuous sentiments that render them superior to local prejudices and schemes of injustice are requisite endowments in representatives. For example, the Senate was intended to be the center of such enlightenment and virtuosity through its insulation guided by Madison's principle of a filtration of talent. However, our legislature has become a breeding ground for the bacteria of partisanship. We must return our representative bodies to the forums of compromise and discourse that they were intended to be, including the positive representative body's large views on all topics.
Before agreeing on our current system of representation, other systems were discussed. Pure democracy was quickly dismissed. Framers admired aspects of the Athenian government, which is largely credited as the first true democracy. However, its arbitrary nature and constant tumult made it inherently flawed. Guided by classical Greek philosophers, the framers revolutionized Aristotle's council by creating a constitutional government composed of multiple bodies from distinct groups, in our case, the people at large in the states, which would ensure that the interests of those groups were represented.
The Philadelphia Convention also debated creating a federal government that didn't represent the people, but the states. William Patterson's New Jersey plan intended to perpetuate the system already in place, which granted each state one vote in a singular legislative house. Yet the majority of the convention was determined to create a truly radical government founded on different principles with a different operation. Hence, this form of representation was overwhelmingly voted down.
One way that representation has already changed in the 21st century is that our chief executive is much more responsive to the people than our founders ever intended. Our method of election needs to reflect this. Changing the presidential election process to a popular vote would better represent the country as a whole. The Brookings Institute notes that until recently, around 75% of Americans supported this change. In order to refine and enlarge, as well as protect the views of our citizen, our government needs to operate on the true desires of our country, rather than defunct electoral college that has never served its true purpose.
Our government also needs to embrace a system of representation that allows for control to rest in multiple parties, not the polarized two-party system we have had for decades. Ranked choice voting would resolve the detriments of two-party politics by having voters rank candidates rather than solely choosing one. In turn, this should lead to a government that truly represents the interests of the people and creates what Hamilton saw in Federalist 52, a house that has an immediate dependence and an intimate sympathy with the people. Thank you. We are now ready for your questions.
Okay, very good. So you didn't talk at all about civic education, which obviously Madison rejects as an alternative. But if we had a more systematic form of civic education in the United States, would that be helpful in ensuring that the legislative bodies were representative of the people?
I think that the civic education of the people would not necessarily translate to a better representative body, because I think that the issue lies in the disconnect from our Congress to its people. So it doesn't necessarily rely on the people to change these issues. It is the issue lies in our Congress.
I disagree with my colleague. I think that an increase in funding towards public education would help increase our government's effectiveness, because the greater the education level is in our country, the less misinformation tends to spread, and limiting misinformation would help limit the amount of representatives and populists in our government.
Just on that point, wouldn't a great deal be determined by who wrote or who chose the textbook out of which people are educated? Because I'll be honest with you, I can write a version of the American history and American civics that frankly would scare a whole bunch of people. Is it only civic education that we need?
I think with the immense polarization of our country, I certainly could see issues arising with writing of textbooks, because I think that it's almost impossible for people, especially writers, to not have some kind of bias. So it could be very, very difficult to try to write and approve a version of a textbook that is very unbiased.
Building off of that, in order to prevent that, instead of teaching history by the account, we could teach history by the event instead, and prevent the biases of a writer.
And even if we were to increase civic education, they would more heavily rely on the delegate model. But we believe as a unit that we believe in the trustee model more, because even if people were more educated on politics, we believe that they would still vote more selfishly and in favor. And with the trustee model, we believe that the representatives would vote for what's best for all the citizens they're representing rather than just themselves.
Thank you.
So you seem to be saying two things, and I'm just trying to figure them out. One, I'm not sure where the problem is. Is the problem in us, the people, or is the problem in our representatives? But then you've just said you can't trust the representatives to do what is best, when you just said they're not doing what is best. So I'm really trying to figure out how we get a system where those in power will do what is best.
I think the most important and first step that we should take in order to prevent any sort of mistrust of the government and any sort of poor decision making in the government is by making an effort as the people to reduce the hyperpolarization in our government. Because instead of being delegates of the people, it seems like our representatives are delegates of the party.
I think that our goal is to see our country operating with a perfect trustee model. I think that our government does operate more like a trustee model, but I think that we are just witnessing sort of corruption due to all this hyper partisanship. And I think that That is why we think that the representatives should be doing what's best and should be doing what's best for the people. But as of right now, we are not seeing that current situation. So we would just like to see that in the future.
Like
No.
James Madison said, if all men were angels, then no government would be necessary. And I think that this explains the problem, that the problem is in the people, but more like the representatives through this trustee model is what actually is being voted on or actually being like represented on.
So I'm still not quite sure I understand. The people are corrupt. Would the representatives then also be corrupt? Or am I missing something?
I think that the main corruption is lying in our Congress and in our representative body. And I think that it's more in the representatives to solve this. I think that with if all men were angels, no government would be necessary. It's also saying that our representatives are also men and they are also going to act selfishly just as the people are.
So would increasing the number of them help this, or would that just be more of these fallen angels?
Well, in increasing the amount of representatives in our government, we would move closer to a pure democracy, which, as we've seen in history with the Athenian government, did not work. We need to have delegates that are educated and informed and can make the best decisions, not based off of the party that they align with, but based off of what they truly think. And in that lies a greater education for the people so that they can elect representatives that will truly be the best fit for our government.
So you praise ranked choice voting. Would you apply that? So I have two questions. One is, would you apply that to the Senate and the House both? And then the second question is, do the Senate and the House have different models of representation? Is the House more of a delegate model and the Senate more of a trustee model, or how do you see that playing out?
Well, to answer the first question, we would allow for ranked choice voting in all elections of the federal level, because it would allow for third parties and independents to have greater power and seat in our government, and that would help prevent gridlock. And to answer the second question, I would say that the House acts more of a delegate because they're closer to their people, because there are so much more of them.
In Federalist 62, Madison states that the Senate should be farther away from the people, because the term lengths are 6 years, they are farther away from the people. So this ensures that they're more of a trustee model with kind of overseeing all the representatives that all the citizens they're representing, rather than being directly tied to them.
So if I were to posit to you that I see a danger in the Senate having 6 years, 6-year terms, and they've got 3.5 years for you to forget what they did the first 2 years of their terms, and therefore they don't necessarily have to respond to constituents. What do you think?
Well, an inherent check on every member of the federal government is the elections. So I would agree that we need to decrease the amount of time per term, because it doesn't allow for, like you said, it allows for 2.5 years of people forgetting what they did.
I think that with the Senate, I think that the term limits, they sort of just create more disconnect from the people. May I finish my statement?
Yes.
I think that it creates further disconnect from the people, and I think especially can, as you said, allow for more of their actions to be swept under the rug, per se.
Thank you.
Oh, very good. Well, thanks for a very lively opportunity to talk. You raised some intriguing points. I mean, ranked choice is, we haven't heard a lot about that today, so that's been helpful. I think that in your opening statement, you did a nice job of referring to the different possibilities, the different discussions that were going on at the time of the founding. But then you brought it up to today, right? I mean, the Senate has been corrupted, has become partisan. If we had had more time, we could have talked about that too. I mean, is the partisanship that we see a kind of inversion or reflection of what Madison talked about when he talked about factions. And then there's the irony, of course, that Madison himself designed the party system that we live in. So, how do we deal with, what do we do about James Madison? I mean, that's the real question. You talked about Athens, you talked about different models of representation. So I thought that was good. I thought that we could have talked, you talked about the president a little bit, which I'm not sure is fully relevant to this without a broader development of the presidential, of presidential representation, the way that the president has become representative. But you did say they didn't expect that. So that was good. Yeah, okay, I better stop now. This was a lively discussion. I'm sure you've had a lot of discussions behind the scenes. I hope you'll keep on talking about this. And you guys are sophomores and juniors, so when you're thinking about colleges, when you out of college, we're right here. Thanks.
Okay, so first of all, I have to tell you, I have very much been looking forward to hearing from the teams from Michigan. And there's some other states also, but those of us who pay attention to civic ed and civics and politics, have clearly talked a lot about these being incredible times for young people to be studying government and how things run, whether it's the whole notion of federalism, given the COVID vaccinations, government shutdown since the pandemic. You all have had some drama in your state at various points. And so I've been looking forward to hearing what you had to say about any of this. This was a really interesting discussion. The ranked choice voting was, again, one of the things that jumped out at me. I really found it significant that you made a very strong, we believe in the trustee model, but we got to find a way to make and to reduce the hyper polarization. And I would love to have had the chance to say, by the way, you got any ideas on how to do that? Because that's clearly one of the things, there are some people who want to argue. And I think that's why they're on the earth, so they can start some stuff with other people. But if you want to make this country run and you want to see something happen, starting at the beginning, we needed to find ways to compromise and work things out. And I'm not sure when we gave up on that as a goal in this country. We just decided, nope, I don't want to do it because it was your idea. I don't know when that happened. I like the fact that you've been talking about ways to resolve that. And I can't stop without saying, I really do hope the people working with you did not miss the word fabulous as the word you chose to describe them. Because a whole bunch of people have been inspired and some like folks, but you think these people are fabulous. And that to me, that's more than the gold star. So good for you. Anyway, congratulations. It's been wonderful listening to you.
Yes, congratulations. I don't have much to add to what my colleagues have said. I very much enjoyed this discussion and also wished we could have continued because you raise a lot of really interesting ideas that I would like more time to talk about. And then some of the phrases, I mean, the bacteria of partisanship. And was that yours or was that Madison's? I mean, that's a great phrase. And others, I mean, it's clear you're really thinking about this. You're thinking both about the problems Madison and his cohort were trying to solve and the problems that you are going to be trying to solve. And I join in applauding your coaches and teachers, and most especially you, who are going to be carrying on this work. And this has been a great conversation you've been having with each other, really well informed by what has happened before and looking ahead to how we can get out of the mess that is being left to you. So thank you all and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And by the way, I don't think Professor Barlow made it clear. It is Juniata College in Pennsylvania. He is inviting you to. I will also invite you to look at Suffolk University in Boston. But I look forward to seeing you in one way or another. So thank
Come on down.
After those advertisements, I see the hearing is over. So I will send the judges back to their realm. And thank you all for coming.